Coming live from the Tivoli Met Radio studio here on our area campus, this is All Sports with Gerardo. Thank you for listening to All Sports through Met Radio on mymetmedia.com, live every Thursday from 3:30 to 5 p.m. This is your host Gerardo, and all I talk is sports. On the show today, I'm going to talk about NFL football, Major League Baseball, and NBA basketball. So before I start the show, I hope you all had a great July. Today is Thursday, August 1st. For the last 3 weeks, there hasn't been an All Sports with Gerardo show coming live from the Tivoli Met Radio studio here on Arari campus. After not having an All Sports with Gerardo show for the last 3 weeks, I can now officially say I have been to all 30 Major League Baseball stadiums. All Sports with Gerardo is finally back. It's good to be back in the studio, and tune in to All Sports with Gerardo every Thursday going forward, and watch out for new content that will be posted to my social media pages in the next few weeks. Moving on now to start off with Major League Baseball. The 2019 Major League Baseball All-Star festivities was at Progressive Field in Cleveland, Ohio. The All-Star Futures game was on Sunday, July 7th. The Home Run Derby was on Monday, July 8th. And the All-Star game was on Tuesday, July 9th. Pete Alonso from the Mets won the 2019 Home Run Derby. This year's Home Run Derby was a great Home Run Derby, especially with Valerio Guerrero Jr., Pete Alonso, and all the other participants. Valerio Guerrero Jr. from the Blue Jays had a great Home Run Derby. I'm surprised he didn't win it with the amount of home runs he hit in each round. But for Pete Alonso from the Mets to win the Home Run Derby, this was great for him. Pete Alonso is having a great season with the Mets. He's actually a rookie. Since he's having a great season with the Mets and in Major League Baseball, Pete Alonso is definitely a runner-up for National League Rookie of the Year. If you don't know who Pete Alonso is, I highly recommend that you watch some Mets games and see who Pete Alonso is. He's been having a great season, especially as a rookie. And I can definitely see Pete Alonso winning National League Rookie of the Year at the end of the season. The American League beat the National League 4-3 in the 2019 Major League Baseball All-Star Game. Shane Bieber was named the All-Star Game MVP for the American League. So in the last 20 years, most of the All-Star Games have been won by the American League. The National League have only won just a few. And the National League did try to come back and win this year's All-Star Game, but unfortunately they fell short, and the American League took another victory in the All-Star Game this year. Next year, the Dodgers are hosting the 2020 All-Star festivities. So the Midsummer Classic will be at Dodger Stadium in Los Angeles, California next year. So make sure to tune in to the All-Star festivities next summer during the 2020 season. The Rockies signed first baseman Yonder Alonso. Troy Tulowitzki announced he's retiring at the age of 34 after a 13-year career in Major League Baseball with the Rockies, Blue Jays, and Yankees. The highlight of Troy Tulowitzki's career was when he was playing for the Colorado Rockies. Everything that Troy Tulowitzki achieved was mainly when he was a Rocky. But after his 13-year career in Major League Baseball, he was a 5-time All-Star, a 2-time Gold Glove winner, a 2-time Silver Slugger. There's no doubt Troy Tulowitzki was one of the best players to ever wear a Rockies uniform. So we're going to have to wait and see if the Rockies retire Troy Tulowitzki's number going into the future. Troy Tulowitzki wore number 2 for the Rockies, and he was definitely one of the best players to ever play for the Rockies. So right now I'm going to update you with everything that happened during the Major League Baseball trade deadline and all the trades that happened up until the deadline. at 4 p.m. Eastern Time on July 31st. Not a lot of moves happened, but here were some of the moves that happened, which were only a few moves. Pitcher Marcus Stroman was traded from the Blue Jays to the Mets. The Reds did a 3-team trade, which included trading Yasiel Puig to the Indians for Trevor Bauer, and the Padres sent outfielder Franmil Reyes to the Indians. Zach Greinke was traded from the Diamondbacks to the Astros. The Dodgers acquired Jed Gurko from the Cardinals. The Tigers traded Nicholas Castellanos to the Cubs. So those were all the moves that happened up until the deadline in this year's Major League Baseball trade deadline. There wasn't a lot of moves, but some of the moves that happened, they were great moves. For the Mets, they're kind of in the situation of contending for a playoff spot or not even making the playoffs. So for the Mets, instead of trading all their good players away like they were going to up until July, they actually added another starting pitcher to make their starting rotation even better. Up until the trade deadline, there was a lot of rumors that starting pitcher Noah Syndergaard was going to get traded. Also, their closer Diaz was going to get traded. So nobody really knew what the Mets were going to do. Were they going to be buyers? Were they going to be sellers? But if they were buyers, they knew they still had a chance of making it into the playoffs and getting a playoff spot. If they were sellers, they were going to get rid of all their good players and just play the last 2 months of baseball, and they wouldn't really care what would happen. And if they made the playoffs or they didn't, oh well, that's how the 2019 season was going to be for the Mets, and they were going to move on to the 2020 season. But the Mets decided to be buyers and keep Noah Syndergaard, Diaz, and some of their other players, since they still want to contend for a playoff spot, since they're not far out of their division or the wild card spots. The Reds landed up trading Yasiel Puig to the Indians, and they landed up adding another starting pitcher, Trevor Bauer, to their starting rotation. There was a lot of rumors that the Indians were going to trade Trevor Bauer, which they did, and I was actually surprised that they traded Trevor Bauer to the Reds. I thought for sure he was going to go to a team that was contending for a playoff spot. The Diamondbacks finally traded one of their good players, and they landed up trading Zach Greinke to the Astros. During the offseason, the Diamondbacks were going to trade Zach Greinke with Paul Goldschmidt and put him in a package and trade him to another team. But the Diamondbacks landed up only trading Paul Goldschmidt and keeping Zach Greinke. I was surprised that the Diamondbacks landed up trading Zach Greinke at the deadline, but the Astros wanted to add another starting pitcher to their starting rotation so they can make it into the playoffs and potentially make it all the way to the World Series, since the Astros do want to try to win the World Series this year. And the Astros, before they got Zach Greinke and now with Zach Greinke, were definitely a World Series contender. And the Astros are favored with a few other teams to win the World Series this year. So we're going to have to wait and see if the Astros reach the World Series and possibly win it. So those were all the trades that happened up until the trade deadline, and those were all the individual players that got traded in the 2019 Major League Baseball season at the trade deadline on July 31st at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. So right now I'm going to update you with the current Rockies schedule and standings after the month of July, and I'm also going to tell you who the Rockies go against in the next week. So after the All-Star break, the Rockies returned back to Coors Field during the weekend, and they went against the Reds. The Rockies landed up taking 2 games from the Reds at Coors Field. The following week, the Rockies went against their divisional rival, the Giants, at Coors Field. It ended up being a 4-game series. Since the second game in the first series between the Rockies and the Giants was postponed due to weather from the first series when the Giants came the first time back in May to Coors Field. So after the Rockies had a 4-game series against the Giants at Coors Field, they ended up getting swept by the Giants and losing all 4 games. The following weekend, the Rockies began their road trip, and they ended up going to New York and having an interleague matchup against the New York Yankees at Yankee Stadium. The Rockies ended up only winning 1 game that series, which was the last game. Then the Rockies continued their road trip down to Washington, and they had a 4-game series against the Nationals, and the Rockies ended up only winning the last game of the series. And then to finish off the road trip, the following weekend, the Rockies went against the Reds in Cincinnati, and the Rockies ended up only winning 1 game, which was the first game against the Reds. And to finish off July, the Rockies returned back to Coors Field, and they went against their divisional rival, the Dodgers, here at Coors Field. The Rockies ended up only winning the first game of the series. So overall, in the month of July, the Rockies didn't play the best baseball that they could have before, and especially after the All-Star break. So hopefully, now that we're turning the page to August, and there's only 2 months left of the regular season, the Rockies can turn the page and start winning some games going into August. Now that we're in August, this weekend, the Rockies go against their divisional rival, the Giants, here at Coors Field. Then the following week, the Rockies hit the road, and they head down to Houston to have an interleague matchup against the Astros. Right before July 4th, back in July, the Rockies had a 2-game series against the Astros here at Coors Field, which they ended up losing the first 2 games of the series. Now the Rockies are heading down to Houston to play the last 2 games of the 4-game series against the Astros down in Houston in an interleague matchup. So hopefully the Rockies can go down to Houston and beat the Astros down there. We're going to have to wait and see if the Rockies beat the Astros. Then the following weekend, the Rockies continue their road trip to San Diego, and they go against the Padres. So hopefully now that we're in August, the Rockies can win some of their division games, and they can go down to Houston in a 2-game series and try to win those games against the Astros, since they didn't beat the Astros here at Coors Field in a 2-game series. So right now I'm going to update you with the current Major League Baseball standings in the American and National League. To start off in the American League East, right now the Yankees are leading this division at 68 games, and the next closest team is the Rays by 7.5 games, and they're sitting at 62 games. In the American League Central, right now the Twins are leading this division at 66 games, but the Indians, they're only 2.5 games back, and they're catching up to the Twins, and they're sitting at 63 games. In the American League West, right now the Astros are leading this division at 69 games. Right behind them is the Athletics by 8 games, and they're sitting at 61 games. In the National League East, right now the Braves are leading this division at 64 games. And right behind them is the Phillies and the Nationals by 6.5 games. And the Phillies and the Nationals are sitting at 57 games. In the National League Central, right now the Cubs and the Cardinals are tied for this division at 57 games. But the Brewers, they're only 1 game back. The National League Central is definitely going to be a tight division, and it may come down to the end of the season. And this has definitely been a 3-team race, and it's definitely been a tight division for most of the season up until now. And in the National League West, right now the Dodgers are leading this division at 71 games, and the Dodgers are the first team to win 70 games this season. And right behind them is the Giants by 15.5 games, and they're sitting at 55 games. Looking at the National League West, it doesn't look like any of the other 4 teams are going to catch up to the Dodgers anytime soon, especially with there being only 2 months remaining this season. The next closest team to the Dodgers is the Giants by 15.5 games. So there's no doubt the Dodgers are going to win the National League West. So that's the current Major League Baseball standings in the American and National League. Now that we're heading into August, in the Major League Baseball Power Rankings, the current top 10 Major League Baseball teams are the Dodgers, Astros, Yankees, Twins, Braves, Indians, Red Sox, Cardinals, Nationals, and Cubs. The teams you definitely want to watch out for going into August is the Dodgers, Astros, Yankees, Twins, and Braves. The top 5 teams are definitely the best teams in Major League Baseball right now, and there's a reason why they're the top 5 in Major League Baseball right now, and they're some of the best teams in Major League Baseball right now. Right now I'm going to take a commercial break. When I come back, I will talk about the NFL. Welcome back to All Sports with Gerardo. Moving on now to NFL football. NFL training camp began for all 32 teams in the middle and towards the end of July. The Rams extended the contracts of head coach Sean McVay and general manager Les Snead through the 2023 season. The Steelers extended the contract of head coach Mike Tomlin through the 2021 season. Michael Thomas and the Saints have agreed to a 5-year contract extension. Michael Thomas is now the highest paid wide receiver in the NFL. Bobby Wagner and the Seahawks have agreed to a 3-year contract extension. Kicker Robbie Gould and the 49ers have agreed to a 4-year contract extension. Linebacker Deion Jones and the Falcons have agreed to a 4-year contract extension. Darren Sproles and the Eagles have agreed to a 1-year contract. Defensive end Alan Bailey and the Falcons have agreed to a 2-year contract. Wide receiver Tyler Boyd and the Bengals have agreed to a 4-year contract extension. Safety Kevin Byrd and the Titans have agreed to a 5-year contract. Wide receiver Alan Hearns and the Dolphins have agreed to a 1-year contract. Defensive tackle Mike Daniels and the Lions have agreed to a 1-year contract. Safety Trey Boston and the Panthers have agreed to a 1-year contract. Football is finally back, and the 2019 football season is just around the corner, and it's getting ready to start now that we're in August. The Broncos go against the Falcons in the 2019 NFL Hall of Fame game on Thursday, August 1st in Canton, Ohio. Also this weekend, the 2019 NFL Hall of Fame induction ceremony is on Saturday, August 3rd in Canton, Ohio. So here is the class of 2019 and the inductees that will be inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 2019. The class of 2019 includes quarterback Champ Bailey from the Broncos, owner Pat Bowlen from the Broncos, Gil Brandt, tight end Tony Gonzalez, cornerback Ty Law, Kevin Hahn, safety Ed Reed from the Ravens, and Johnny Robertson. So those are the inductees that will be inducted into the NFL Hall of Fame. And that's the class of 2019 that will enter the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So congrats to all the inductees on being inducted into the NFL Hall of Fame. So football's finally back. I can't wait for this Hall of Fame game between the Broncos and the Falcons this week. It should definitely be a great game, even though most of the starters on the Broncos and the Falcons won't be playing in this game. It'll definitely be great to see our backup players and all the other players that are fighting for a roster spot on the Broncos and even for the Falcons. So I'm glad football's finally back now that training camp's here. Preseason football's getting ready to start next week. And in 1 month, and before you know it, the regular season will be here. And it'll be time to kick off the 100th season of NFL football. So I can't wait for September to come, and it's just around the corner before the regular season starts. But I'm glad training camp's underway. It's finally August. We got all the Hall of Fame festivities in Canton, Ohio this weekend. We got preseason football getting ready to begin next week, and in 1 month the regular season will begin. So football is finally back. Right now I'm going to take a commercial break. When I come back, I will talk about the NBA. Welcome back to All Sports with Gerardo. Moving on now to NBA basketball. NBA free agency began on Sunday, June 30th. So right now I'm going to update you with all the final moves that happened during NBA free agency up until now. Russell Westbrook was traded from the Thunder to the Rockets. In exchange, the Thunder received Chris Paul from the Rockets. CJ McCollum and the Trailblazers have agreed to a 3-year contract extension. So here are the top stories of NBA free agency. Chris Paul, we're going to have to wait and see. He may or may not even play for the Thunder and wear a Thunder uniform this season. So we're going to have to wait and see what Chris Paul and the Thunder do. But if Chris Paul does play for the Thunder this season, it won't be for that long, and he will get traded. We don't know if it'll happen at the beginning of the season or if he's going to have to wait till the trade deadline in the middle of the season, towards the All-Star break. This season is definitely going to be exciting in the NBA, especially in the Western Conference. I can't wait for the NBA season to begin. The Western Conference is going to be very competitive. The Eastern Conference is going to be great. And there's definitely teams that have a big 2, a big 3. There's teams that have superstars. We're going to have new teams contending for playoff spots. We're going to have new teams favored to make it into the playoffs, reach the NBA Finals, and possibly win the NBA Finals. I can't wait for the NBA season to begin, and it's definitely going to be exciting, especially in the Western Conference. And we're going to have to see what teams make it into the playoffs in the Eastern and Western Conference, what 2 teams reach the NBA Finals, and what team wins the NBA Finals this season. But I definitely see some new teams having great seasons, making it into the playoffs. I see new teams reaching the NBA Finals, and there will be a different team that wins the NBA Finals this season. And we're going to have to wait and see. But the 2 Los Angeles teams are definitely favored to reach the NBA Finals and possibly win the NBA Finals. The Clippers and the Lakers, especially the Clippers, have the highest favorite of reaching the NBA Finals and winning the NBA Finals. We're going to have to wait and see if one of the two Los Angeles teams reaches the NBA Finals or wins the NBA Finals. But this season, there will be a new team that wins the NBA Finals. And it may or may not be the Warriors. And we're going to have a lot of new teams in the playoffs. We have new teams with new superstars. So it's definitely going to be an exciting season, and I can't wait for it to begin in the next few months. The Spurs have hired Tim Duncan as an assistant coach. The Warriors are retiring Andre Iguodala's number 9 jersey. This season, the Lakers announced LeBron James will start at point guard. Right now, I'm going to take a commercial break. When I come back, I will talk about the end of the show. Welcome back to All Sports with Gerardo. Moving on now to end the show. What to watch for this weekend sports? The Broncos go against the Falcons in the 2019 NFL Hall of Fame game on Thursday, August 1st in Canton, Ohio. The 2019 NFL Hall of Fame induction ceremony is on Saturday, August 3rd in Canton, Ohio. NFL training camp is underway for all 32 teams. NFL preseason football begins next week and it's just around the corner. Major League Baseball, the Rockies. Moving on now, on the next show, I will talk about NFL football, Major League Baseball, and NBA basketball. I hope you all have a great weekend. It's good to be back here in the Tivoli Met Radio studio, here on Auraria campus, doing the All Sports with Gerardo show. So make sure you tune in to the next All Sports with Gerardo show next Thursday from 3:30 to 5 p.m. All Sports with Gerardo is finally back. I want to say thank you to everybody that listens to All Sports through Met Radio here on mymetmedia.com. Subscribe or like my pages on social media at All Sports with Gerardo. Until next time, this is Gerardo.